I want you to imagine that you have about $2,000, let's say, to spend on your child's wardrobe, and you can purchase anything you'd like as long as it's related to their wardrobe. What would you buy, and how would you make the most out of that investment? Well, I can tell you exactly what I did when my husband and I were presented with that opportunity. And that's coming up next on the atwhatcostblog.com. Well, hello friend. I'm Mary Beth from the atwhatcostblog.com. I'm married to Brian, and we have 3 boys, ages 8, 7, and 5. Oh, he just turned 5. And I kind of feel like he's still like 2 or 3 years old. Do you feel like that sometimes with your kids? They just grow so fast. But I digress. So let's pick back up with our story of your sizable funds to buy a wardrobe. So as I mentioned before, my husband and I had about $2,000 to spend on our children's wardrobes. And because they were in foster care and there are some stipends or different grants that are available for them, we were able to use some of that as a clothing allowance. And that was a blessing, a true blessing. But it was also a little bit of a curse. I had no idea what they would need. I had no idea what they would like or how they would grow, how fast they would grow, which seasons to buy for, and so I relied on a lot of advice from others, but I did know that I wanted the things that I purchased for them to last. I wanted to make the most bang for my buck and have things that I could pass down, which meant I needed to think through lots and lots of different things, and I had a short amount of time to do it. So let's go right into our tips. Let's talk first about rolls. Now, we have another laundry video where we talked a little bit about reducing your children's wardrobe and thinking through the roles that they serve, but let's dive just a little bit deeper into those roles. So the way that you purchase clothing for your first child is probably very different from the way that you purchased it for your second child, or maybe thinking about what you'll want to keep and what you'll want to pass down. So as I was going through and pulling out clothes and figuring out what I was going to buy, I really tried to keep in mind the roles that they would have and how they would need to use their clothing. So for our family, our 3 boys have 3 primary roles. Play, which they do a lot of outdoors, so we needed outdoor rugged play clothes. They also all attend school or childcare, and we attend church or church functions, so they would need a few pieces of clothes to dress up, they would need some to play outside in, and they would need some that they could go to school in. I bought everything I could get my hands on. Everybody told me, boys wear through the knees of their jeans. You've got to have a lot of jeans. Stock up on all of these things. Not my kids. They didn't wear through their jeans. You know what they really wanted? Sweatpants. I didn't buy a lot of those, but I had a lot of jeans. I probably bought, I think, 10 or 12 pairs of jeans for each one of them in their different sizes. And I shopped smart, so I got a lot of things on clearance. It was off seasons, and so I could buy a pair of jeans from an expensive brand for nearly nothing. I, in fact, was able to stock up on several sizes ahead, which led to another issue that I think we commonly face with hand-me-downs. Storage. Where are you going to put all these things? That's what I was asking myself. Now, as those items were coming in, I took note of how each of them was stored. So the things that I was going to put in bins, I wanted to be sure that any of the print stayed where it needed to stay. I have found over the years that oftentimes the screen printing or the printing that kind of puffs up from the t-shirt, it tends to stick together, especially if there's fluctuations in temperature. But honestly, it did it just being in their closets. So I wanted to make sure that I always kept a piece of tissue paper in between any of those that I was going to store. But nowadays, I just skip buying those altogether. I don't want the hassle of having to care for a variety of different things in a variety of different ways. Now, I did have to get creative when we had a little less storage space. I sometimes would put the items in those shallow under the bed storage bins. Other times it was in a bigger Rubbermaid tote. And oftentimes I would bundle things together and put them in those large Ziploc bag things that you can suck all of the air out of with the vacuum. That seemed to keep everything protected regardless of whether or not I was storing that in climate-controlled storage. So keep in mind the different items that you may need to store and the best way for you to do that. That really depends on your circumstances. There may be a lot of different solutions out there, but if you live in an area where you have to utilize a basement that may be wet or damp, then you want to store those things and protect them from that moisture. But if you live in a more dry climate, maybe you have to store them in an attic where there could be a lot of heat, or maybe you have a lot of opportunities to store those clothes right in your children's closets or under their bed. Think through the area that you live in and try and find the best solution for you to store those items. After I purchased that large amount of clothing, I was able to pass things down from child to child and didn't really have to purchase a lot of new clothing for, to be honest, about 2 years. And so it gave me this wonderful test environment that I could really see what our kids needed and what they never used. So now when I'm buying clothing for our oldest child and replenishing their wardrobe, I look at the current wardrobe they have and try to duplicate that with the things that worked the best. So as I'm learning more about our children and as they're learning more about themselves, I can see their different preferences, but I can buy a variety of things that I still can pass down from child to child. They enjoy a new thing every now and then, and I enjoy not having to spend a ton of money on clothing. So keep in mind as you're replenishing older children's wardrobes, or maybe even just thinking through what you're going to store for the next child, what they actually use, what they prefer, and how you can best duplicate that in their upcoming wardrobe. Now, while we were working through their wardrobe in that little test environment, I learned a few tips and tricks that I'll share with you now. The first, always go with the adjustable pants. Those elastic bands and buttons were lifesavers for us. As my children were growing up and sometimes growing out, I would need to cinch those pants in or let them out to get them through that size. And the adjustable waist is a perfect way to increase the longevity of the clothes that you're going to hand down to your children, but also increase the time that they're able to wear those. So I always look for pants with an adjustable waist. Now, along with that, I avoid the sets of clothing that you often can find together. Now, it may be tempting because they do seem a bit cheaper to buy them together as a set than they would if you were going to buy them separately. But it has been my experience that the pants typically do not have the adjustable waist, and they just don't fit the same way that the other pants that you buy as a single do. And often the shirts are the same way too. My child was never able to wear both of those things at the same time. Either the shirts were too tight or the pants were too long, and nothing ever just fit quite right. I also never remove the tags until my child is ready to wear that clothing. In the beginning, I would take everything out, take all the tags off, wash it in my favorite detergent for them, and put it away in the drawers in anticipation of what they would be wearing. And I can tell you, when we reduced our children's wardrobes a few months ago, I put a lot of clothing that was brand new, that they had never worn, into the donation pile, which is great for someone else, but not so great for my wallet. So I always leave the tags on until they're about ready to wear them. The last tip is that I really think through the differences in our children when I'm buying clothing. So our older two children are really slim build, and they really are still swimming in skinny jeans sometimes. But our youngest child has more of a stocky build, and so skinny jeans are just not comfortable for him. When I'm buying clothes for our older children, I keep that in mind, and I typically buy a more regular fit, or at least something that doesn't seem quite as slim or has a bit more stretch to it that we can pass down and really get good wear out of. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't ever buy skinny jeans, but I keep it very balanced and don't go overboard in one area over another. Now, here at the AtWhatCostBlog.com, we look at everyday living through the lens of God's Word. And I was really challenged in this area recently when I studied 1 Peter with a group of friends and thought more about this idea of storing up treasure. Now, we were hanging on to an abundance of clothing in our home, and it was really costing us a lot of storage space and mental capacity to keep a hold of all of those things. So I turned to God's Word to see what Jesus has to say about abundant living from a biblical perspective. Let's look first at Matthew 6, verses 19 through 21. Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy and thieves break in and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth or rust can destroy and thieves cannot steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Now, would I consider my children's clothing a treasure? Probably not. According to the world's definition, they were just t-shirts and jeans and pajamas. But I really was putting a lot of my time and effort and financial resources, whether they were mine or something we were given. I was putting a lot of energy into that. And so in many ways, that could be considered my treasure. And as I was moving unwanted clothing or unworn clothing from box to box and trying to find new storage spaces for them, I was confronted with the reality that I was putting my time and effort into the wrong things. I think often we are faced in this world with a skewed version of abundance. We feel that if we have enough stuff to be prepared for any situation, that we are living in abundance and that it is a good thing. But as we can see here in Matthew 6, abundant living isn't piles and piles and piles of stuff. It's laying up our treasure in heaven. Now, you may be asking, how do we do that? Well, prayer is a good place to start. Maybe doing a Bible study. I always recommend 1 Peter, especially when we're going through this quest of minimalism. It just helps to refocus what our real pursuit in life should be. So as we go through this journey, my prayer is that you're able to shift your view of abundant living into an abundant living view from Christ. I'm so glad we had a chance to visit today. I hope that you found all of this information helpful. If you did, please leave a comment. I would love to visit with you in the comments section. And if you liked this video, I would be so grateful for you to give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you'd like to see more videos like this in the future. I hope you have a wonderful day and good luck storing those hand-me-downs. Bye-bye.